I, 34, female, have been married to my husband Mark, 36, male, for the past 8 years. We have built a life together, facing both highs and lows. Mark works a demanding job, which means he is away for work for most days of the week. I have a better work-life balance than him, as I work as a freelance graphic designer, so I can work as well as manage the household work primarily. I earn pretty well every month because I have had the same old clients for a very long time. Mark and I have separate bank accounts and we equally pay our mortgage and other bills. We have never had any major fights in our relationship, and I can even say that our marriage was as close to perfection as it could get. Or so I used to think. We're also child-free. This is something that we both have decided since the day we met, which is why we eventually got married. Throughout our marriage, we had both never changed our mind, and our decision to be child-free has remained the same. A month ago, Mark had started acting very distant and strange towards me. Whenever I would ask him if something was up with him, he would simply reply that he had a lot to think about. This was unusual, as he and I always shared everything with each other, but I decided to brush it off as work-related stress. On a weekend evening, after a delightful dinner at our favorite restaurant, Mark's phone buzzed with a message as we drove back. Mark, who had been cheerful and enjoying the night, suddenly became solemn. Concerned, I inquired if everything was okay. Mark, with a noticeable change in demeanor, casually mentioned it was a work-related message. I nodded, accepting his explanation, though a sense of curiosity lingered in the air. When we reached home, Mark suddenly collapsed onto our sofa, his composure shattered as he broke down. I was taken aback seeing him this way and thought perhaps something was physically wrong with him at this point. I asked him if I needed to call 911, but he, wiping away his tears, told me there was no need for such drastic measures. Still worried, I asked him what was troubling him. I assured him that he could share any devastating news from work without fear of judgment. Mark met my gaze with tearful eyes and asked if I really meant that. I told him that he had nothing to worry about and he could speak freely about what was troubling him. Mark took a deep breath and finally confessed to me that he had been sleeping with someone. My world stood still as I heard those words, and I just stared at him blankly, unable to comprehend what he had just told me. Mark then continued to tell me that he never wanted to cheat on me and that it meant absolutely nothing to him. I was absolutely shocked to hear this and asked him who this woman was. He then blurted out that he had been sleeping together with someone from the office. My mind raced hearing this, trying to decipher who he was referring to. I asked him to just tell me the name, and Mark reluctantly revealed that it was none other than his personal assistant, Tina. My body went numb as I heard her name, and a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I had encountered Tina on numerous occasions, having met her during various social events and gatherings. As Mark's personal assistant, she had been a familiar face in our lives, seemingly just a professional acquaintance. Little did I know that behind the scenes, Mark and she were doing things that went far beyond professional boundaries. I sat there stunned, trying to process what I had just heard. Tina? I can't believe this. How long has this been going on? It's been 3 months. 3 months? You kept this hidden from me for 3 whole months? I didn't know how to tell you. I've been trying to find the right time. You've been cheating on me with someone who works for you as an assistant, and you thought you could tell me at the right time? Are you serious right now? It's complicated. Complicated? What is so complicated about this? You have been sleeping with someone else. It is literally the dumbest thing you've ever done. This is when Mark revealed that the text message he had received earlier was in fact from Tina. She had wanted Mark to tell me for a long time, but he had been trying to put it off. Tonight, she had finally threatened him, and she would tell me the truth herself if he didn't, which forced Mark's reluctant confession. Without hesitation, I seized Mark's phone and delved into their messages. The content was nothing short of repulsive. Discovering that my husband had been engaging in inappropriate exchanges, including explicit pictures with a woman 5 years his junior and his employee, was nauseating. I saw messages where Tina had sternly warned Mark to muster the courage and confess, otherwise she would take matters into her own hands. Mark, in turn, had been pleading with her for a while to give him more time, but she had been relentless in pushing him to come clean. As disgusted as I was with both of them, a strange sense of gratitude emerged when I saw that Tina had urged Mark to confess. Without her intervention, I realized Mark might have continued his affair and I would have remained completely unaware. After seeing what I had to see, I couldn't handle being in the same room as Mark. I walked upstairs, locked myself in my bedroom. He kept banging on the door, pleading for me to open it so we could talk further, but I firmly refused. I didn't sleep the entire night thinking about the words Mark had spoken to me. Each word had cut through me like a knife, and I was still feeling uneasy and angry for what he had done to me in our marriage. The following morning, as I descended the stairs for breakfast, I found Mark in the kitchen, silently preparing our morning meal. He approached me with a request to talk, and I simply nodded, unsure of what else could be said at this point. Mark expressed his decision to sever all ties with Tina and terminate her role as his assistant. I looked at him in astonishment as he went on to assure me that he would do everything in his capacity to seek my forgiveness, even if it meant asking for it every day. I retorted, informing him that it was too late for any action to rectify the situation, given that he had shattered my trust. Mark began to whimper, insisting that I had to forgive him because he couldn't fathom a life without me. I scoffed at his plea, emphasizing that he should have considered the consequences before engaging in an affair with his assistant. Despite my resistance, he continued to plead, expressing remorse for his actions. He claimed that he had reflected on the situation throughout the night, regretting the choices he had made. Witnessing the pain on my face upon learning about the affair made him realize the gravity of his actions. Tearfully, he begged me for another chance. I didn't want to entertain any further discussion with him, so I requested him to leave me alone to contemplate the situation. He pleaded with me not to consider divorce and begged for one last chance. Ignoring his pleas, I walked away and opted to spend my time at a nearby cafe to focus on work, hoping to avoid any confrontation in the house. In the evening, after completing my work, I drove to my parents' place. My dad and mom were surprised to see me, and they could sense that something was amiss just by looking at my face. Concerned, they sat me down and inquired about what was going on. That's when I broke down. Throughout the day, I had managed to stay strong, but in front of my parents, I felt like a vulnerable child again. I couldn't hold back the tears any longer, so I sat down with my parents, and the weight of the situation finally overcame me. My mom, with a concerned expression, wiped away my tears and gently urged me to share what had happened. Choking on my words, I began to recount the painful revelation about Mark's affair with his personal assistant, Tina. Between sobs, I narrated the entire heartbreaking discovery of his infidelity and how he had been cheating on me for 3 years. My parents listened attentively, their faces reflecting a mixture of anger and sorrow. They were as shocked as me that Mark had cheated on me. Both of them reassured me that whatever path I chose, they would stand by me. My mom insisted that my happiness and well-being would be the priority in any decision I made. My dad, while angry at Mark for hurting me, offered pragmatic advice on the importance of self-respect and making choices that aligned with my values. I was happy that my parents had my back. Through their comforting words and empathetic presence, my parents provided a sanctuary where I could express my pain and confusion without judgment. Mark, who had perhaps gone to his work site, kept calling me over and over, pleading with me that he was going to do everything in his power to repair the damage he had caused. I knew deep down that I wanted to divorce him, but he was also the man I had been in love with for so many years. It was hard for me to come to a decision. I decided to pack some of my things and stay with my parents for the time being. A week passed and I didn't return home despite how much Mark called. Then, this last weekend, while I was still in my parents' place, the doorbell rang. It was none other than Mark. My parents were extremely angry to see him at their doorstep and asked him what he was doing there. Mark revealed that he had something very important to talk about and insisted that he needed to talk to me urgently. I reluctantly agreed and asked my parents to give us some space so we could talk. Mark and I sat down in my parents' living room to talk. I waited impatiently for him to break the silence. Mark, avoiding eye contact, nervously began hinting at something he didn't want me to overreact about. My brows furrowed in confusion and I looked at him, irritated. Finally, he mustered the courage to confess that despite his earlier promise to sever ties with Tina, the situation had taken an unexpected turn. Mark revealed that he had tried to break things off with Tina as he had promised earlier. She had revealed to him then that she was in fact 1 month pregnant with his child. My eyes widened in shock upon hearing this. Mark explained that he too was taken aback, just like me, as he never expected her to get pregnant and had confronted Tina about her intentions regarding the pregnancy. Shockingly, Tina expressed her desire to keep the child. As Mark continued to speak, I sat there in numb disbelief. He told me that, as I knew, he had an absent father while growing up, hence he couldn't hear the thought of his own child experiencing the same absence of paternal love. To my astonishment, he dropped the bombshell. He had decided to divorce me so that he could marry Tina and be a part of their child's life. My eyes bore into him, registering the shock and incredulity of his decision. My initial shock morphed into a mix of disbelief and anger as Mark's words hung in the air. He expected me to digest the news that not only had he been unfaithful, but that he now intended to divorce me and start a new life with Tina, all because of an unplanned pregnancy. I felt a surge of emotions, betrayal, hurt, and a deep sense of injustice. I couldn't fathom how he could prioritize the wants of a woman he had an affair with over the years he had spent building a life together. The idea that he was willing to abandon our marriage for Tina and their unborn child left me speechless. After a moment of silence, I finally found my voice, the words seething through gritted teeth. You're willing to throw away everything we had for a child that resulted from your affair? You want to abandon our family for this? My voice wavered between anger and a tremor of hurt. Mark, avoiding eye contact, mumbled something about wanting to be there for his child and provide the upbringing he never had. I couldn't believe the audacity of his request for understanding and acceptance in the face of such a colossal betrayal. In the midst of all the horrible news, Mark then shared that Tina lacked parental support and was having a tough time with the challenges of impending motherhood. He explained how Tina had told him how scared she was and unsure about juggling her job and household responsibilities since she never had anyone to look up to. I looked at him curiously, waiting for him to get to the point. Mark, with a straight face, then told me that because I'm childless, the least I could do for him and Tina was to move in with them after their marriage so I could take care of his new family. I felt a surge of disbelief and indignation at Mark's audacious proposal. He wanted me to not only accept the dissolution of our marriage, but also play a supporting role in the new life he planned to build with Tina and their unborn child. The sheer absurdity of his request left me momentarily speechless. You want me to move in with you and Tina and take care of your new family after everything that has happened? I exclaimed, a mixture of disbelief and anger coloring my words. Mark, seemingly oblivious to the incredulity of his suggestion, nodded earnestly. I shook my head in disbelief, unable to fathom the nerve it took for him to suggest such a preposterous arrangement. The idea of becoming an accessory to the life he was building with Tina after the devastation he had caused was beyond comprehension. Mark tried to convince me further by telling me that it wouldn't be a lot of change for me anyway, as he planned on living with Tina in our home after our divorce. My eyes widened in shock upon hearing this. I started to laugh at his face after hearing his absurd request. I couldn't believe he thought I would just comply with such an outrageous demand. You want me to move in with you and your pregnant mistress after divorcing me? Are you out of your mind? I exclaimed, a mix of disbelief and anger in my tone. Mark attempted to justify his request, emphasizing the difficulties Tina would face as a soon-to-be mother with no parental guidance. He argued that any involvement would ensure stability and support for their new family. Frustration and anger boiled within me as I rejected his proposition outright. This is your mess, Mark. I won't be a part of it. I'm not responsible for your choices, I declared firmly, my resolve strengthening in the face of such an unreasonable request. He seemed taken aback by my refusal, as if he had expected me to comply with his absurd plan. He started pleading, attempting to guilt-trip me into accepting his terms, but I was resolute. The unraveling of our marriage had reached an unimaginable low, and I was determined not to be further entangled in the wreckage. Mark, hearing my refusal, then started to get angry. He retorted that I was being selfish, and as a woman I should understand what Tina was going through. He continued to yell that I didn't have a proper job anyway, so if I wanted, he could pay me to be a housemaid and look after their child. What nonsense are you spouting here? My dad bellowed. You cheated on our daughter, and now you want her to babysit your illegitimate child? Get out of here. My mom stood there, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and fury. I was stunned and couldn't find the words to respond. Mark, realizing the gravity of the situation, looked nervously between me and my enraged parents. Without waiting for Mark to say anything further, I walked out of the room, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. The shock and heartbreak I felt were overwhelming, and I needed a moment to collect my thoughts. After he left, my parents came to comfort me. My mother told me firmly that I needed to divorce his sorry behind and take him for everything he had put me through. I was still seething with anger at how entitled Mark had acted towards me. I knew I wanted to teach him a lesson and couldn't let him get away with it. I remember our entire conversation in the living room was recorded anyway, as my parents had cameras in their house's shared spaces. I decided that I should return Tina a favor by letting her know the kind of man Mark was. Unable to contain my amusement, I wrote a long email to her detailing exactly what Mark had told me and attached the recording so she would be fully aware of the kind of man she was marrying and the absurd expectations he had. As you can imagine, the ensuing shit show was better than any drama I could have imagined. Tina replied back saying that she had no idea about this and told me that she would be confronting Mark regarding this. I smirked in satisfaction as my work here was done. From what I've heard from mine and Mark's mutual friends, Tina and Mark had a heated argument regarding what he had told me. In the midst of their confrontation, Tina made it clear that she wasn't willing to accept the absurd expectations Mark had for me to join their new family and take care of their child. The revelation about Mark's intentions and his attempt to manipulate the situation had left her furious and betrayed. Ever since their confrontation, I have been getting calls and messages from Mark calling me a bitch for telling Tina everything. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for revealing Mark's true character to his new wife and potentially ruining their marriage? Update 1. Thank you, everyone, for your kind comments and suggestions. It's been 3 days since my last update, and after going through all the comments, I decided to meet with Tina and have a face-to-face meeting with her regarding this whole ordeal. I set up a meeting with Tina at a quiet cafe to have a private talk. As we sat facing each other, you could feel the tension in the air, and Tina's eyes showed a mix of curiosity and worry. Tina broke the awkward silence by saying sorry to me. She admitted to causing trouble in my life, expressing shame for ruining my marriage. I smiled politely and reassured her that she wasn't the sole culprit, as Mark could have put a stop to it if he wanted. She nodded with regret and asked if Mark had reached out to me since I sent her the recording. That's when I shared the various messages and attempts Mark had made to contact me in the past few days. Tina was shocked by what she saw. She disclosed that after listening to the recording, she had been debating whether to proceed with the marriage because she had no clue about this side of him. She went on to share how absurd it was for him to expect me to leave everything behind for him. Tina explained that ever since he found out about her pregnancy, he had become overly possessive, never giving her a moment alone. Tina appeared miserable as she continued sharing her experience, revealing how Mark had gone to the extent of asking her to quit her job in a few months to stay at home and care for the child. The idea seemed to have shaken her, and she expressed her reluctance, emphasizing that she didn't want to give up her source of income. I nodded in understanding, suggesting that she carefully consider her options. Curious about my plans, she asked what I intended to do, and I replied that I had decided to go through with the divorce, as Mark had requested, and that I no longer wanted to be associated with him. Our meeting concluded with a sense of understanding and solidarity. While our paths had intersected through Mark's actions, we both recognized the importance of maintaining our dignity and moving forward with lessons learned. As we parted ways, I wished Tina the best in her journey of healing and growth, grateful that we could find common ground despite the challenging circumstances. As for Mark, I'll be meeting with a lawyer soon that my dad has set me up with, and hopefully can proceed with serving him with the divorce papers soon. Update 2. Since my last update, 1 month has passed and I have officially served Mark with divorce papers. Mark, predictably, did not take the news well. He tried reaching out, bombarding me with messages and calls, pleading for another chance and expressing regret for his actions. However, I have maintained a firm stance, focusing on the legal proceedings and ensuring that my rights and interests are protected. It has not been an easy journey dealing with the emotional aftermath of a broken marriage and facing the reality of starting anew. My parents have been a pillar of support, helping me navigate through the complexities of divorce and providing the emotional strength I needed. As the legal process unfolds, I am gradually reclaiming my life and rediscovering my independence. The process has been emotionally taxing, yet I remain resolute in my decision to sever ties with him and move forward with my life. The support from friends and the Reddit community has been invaluable, serving as a source of encouragement during moments of doubt. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update. I'm pleased to inform you that Mark and I are now officially separated. While the official divorce is still a few months away, it feels empowering to have embarked on this journey of separation. As anticipated, Mark and his legal team put up a strong defense against me. They accused me of sharing the recording with Tina, alleging that it caused him distress. In response, my lawyer presented evidence of Mark's affair, his affair baby, and his continued persistence to harass me throughout the entire ordeal. Despite the legal complexities surrounding the division of assets, particularly our shared home, I focused on rebuilding my life. The emotional and mental distance from Mark has allowed me to gain clarity on my priorities and personal goals. I have immersed myself in my work as a freelance graphic designer, finding solace in the creative process. The steady income from my long-standing clients have provided financial independence, enabling me to stand firm during the legal battle. The support from friends and family has been invaluable. And I've surrounded myself with positive influences that encourage personal growth. Engaging in activities I enjoy and taking care of my well being have become central to my daily routine. Moving forward, I'm determined to emerge from this ordeal stronger and more resilient. As the legal proceedings progress, I remain optimistic about the future and the prospect of creating a new chapter in my life, unburdened by the weight of Mark's actions. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.